A mother and her young daughter were walking through New York City when the mother tried to hail a cab. As they waited, the little girl noticed a group of women dressed in flashy clothes loitering on a street corner. Finally, the mother got a cab and they climbed in. The curious little girl turned to her mother and asked, "Mommy, what are those ladies doing over there?" The mother, trying to dodge the question, replied, "Oh, those ladies are just waiting for their husbands to come pick them up on their way home from work." The cab driver, overhearing the exchange, turned around and said, "Come on, lady, tell your daughter the truth. They're hookers." There was a brief pause of awkward silence. Then the little girl, with a confused look, asked, "Mommy, do the hooker ladies have children?" The mother, without missing a beat, replied, "Of course, dear. Where do you think cabbies come from?" My husband forgot to zip his pants today, so I politely told him, "Your garage is open." He zipped them up and asked me with a wink, "Did you see my monster truck parked inside?" I smiled back and said, "No, just a small Toyota with 2 flat tires." He's gone upstairs in a mood. At a Southern university, students in the psychology program attend their first class on emotional extremes. "Just to establish some parameters," says the professor to a student from Arkansas, "what is the opposite of joy?" "Sadness," says the student. "And the opposite of depression?" he asks a young lady from Oklahoma. "Elation," she says. "And you, sir," he asks a young man from Texas, "what about the opposite of woe?" The Texan replies, "Sir, I believe that would be giddy up." A man drinks a shot of rum every night before bed. After many years of this, the wife wants him to quit. So she decides her course of action. She gets 2 shot glasses, filling one with water and the other with rum. After getting him to the table that had the glasses, she brings his fishing bait box. She says, "I want you to see this." She puts a worm in the water and it swims around. She puts a worm in the rum, and the worm dies immediately. She then says, feeling that she has made her point clear, "What do you have to say about this experiment?" He responds by saying, "If I drink rum, I won't get worms." Young man and young lady dated, and, after few dating with young lady for some time, young man decides it is time to marry her. He proceeds with all the necessary plans, and finally the day comes. On the day of the wedding, the young man has yet to pay the pastor for performing the ceremony. However, the pastor has a plan. The service proceeds as planned, the vows are exchanged, etc. Now it is time for the groom to kiss his bride. The pastor sees this as the perfect opportunity to ask to be paid. He pulls the young man aside and asks him, "Can you please pay me?" Not wanting to create a scene, the young man asked, "How much do I owe you?" The pastor thinks quickly and replies, "Pay me according to your wife's beauty." The young man discreetly pulled out $5 and gave it to the pastor. Although annoyed by this, the pastor continues the ceremony and says, "You may now kiss the bride." At this point, the veil is lifted from the bride's face to allow the groom to kiss her. As the groom is about to kiss his new bride, the pastor interrupts and promptly hands the groom $4.50. Jimmy's father used to leave the house saying, "Just stretching my legs." But Jimmy's mother was suspicious. One day she told Jimmy, "Follow your father. Find out what he really means." So Jimmy followed him. Down the street, through alleys, past a few parks, until finally he figured it out. The next day at gym class, while warming up for basketball, Jimmy was stretching, touching his toes, pulling his quads, when his coach walked over and asked, "How's it going, Jimmy?" Jimmy smiled and said, "Not bad. Just getting ready to meet a hooker." One night, as a couple lay down for bed, the husband gently taps his wife on the shoulder and starts rubbing her arm. The wife turns over and says, "I'm sorry, honey. I've got a gynecologist appointment tomorrow and I want to stay fresh." The husband, rejected, turns over and tries to sleep. A few minutes later, he rolls back over and taps his wife again. This time he whispers in her ear, "Do you have a dentist appointment tomorrow too?" A farmer was sitting on his porch one day when a young man drives in and comes to the door. "Sir, I was driving by and noticed you had a lot of milkweed in your pasture. Would you mind if I went out and got some milk?" "You don't get milk from milkweed," the farmer replied. "Oh, yes," said the young man. I have a degree in agriculture from Texas A&M. I know all about it. Well, help yourself, said the farmer. He soon saw the young man coming back to his car with 2 buckets full of milk. The next day, the farmer was again sitting on his porch when the same young man drove up. Sir, yesterday when I was getting milk, I noticed you had some honeysuckle vine on the fence row. I wondered if you would mind if I got some honey? You don't get honey from honeysuckle, said the farmer. Again, the young man explained about his degree from A&M, so the farmer agreed to let him collect some honey. Soon the young man came back to his car with 2 buckets full of honey. The next day, the same young man drove up to the farmer's house. Sir, yesterday when I was getting the honey, I noticed you had some pussy willow trees down by the creek. The farmer said, Let me get my shoes and I'll go with you. A small boy is sent to bed by his father. 5 minutes later, Dad. What? I'm thirsty. Can you bring me a drink of water? No, you had your chance. Lights out. 5 minutes later, Dad? What? I'm thirsty. Can I have a drink of water? I told you no! If you ask again, I'll have to spank you. 5 minutes later, Dad? What? When you come in to spank me, can you bring me a drink of water? During a hockey game, a coach pulled one of his 7-year-old players aside and asked, Do you know what teamwork is? The little boy nodded. And do you understand that it's not about winning or losing, but playing together as a team? Another nod. So you know that when a penalty is called, you shouldn't argue, yell, or call the referee a peckerhead, right? The boy nodded again. And when I sub you out so another kid gets a turn, it's not good sportsmanship to call your coach a dumb jerk, is it? A final nod. Great, said the coach. Now, can you go explain all that to your mother? 2 elderly residents of a cozy Florida mobile home park, a widower and a widow, had known each other for years. Their paths often crossed at community events, always sharing a warm smile or light conversation. One evening during a lively supper at the neighborhood activity center, they found themselves seated across from each other. As the evening unfolded, so did their conversation, easy, genuine, and full of laughter. Swept up in the comfort of the moment, the widower felt a spark of courage. With a hopeful smile, he leaned in and asked, Will you marry me? The widow paused, eyes twinkling, then smiled back and said, Yes, I will. They parted that night with full hearts, both feeling the joy of a new beginning. But the next morning, the widower awoke with a nagging worry. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't remember her answer. Had she said yes, or had he imagined it? Anxious, he picked up the phone and called her. I'm so sorry, he said gently. My memory isn't what it used to be. Last night I asked if you'd marry me, but I can't remember what you said. The widow let out a warm, familiar laugh. I said yes, she replied sweetly, and I meant it. Then with a playful tone she added, I'm so glad you called because I couldn't remember who had asked me. An elderly man walked into a lumber yard one morning and asked to apply for a job as a woodcutter. The boss looked him up and down, clearly skeptical. You're pretty old for this kind of work, the boss said, folding his arms. The old man just smiled. Age doesn't matter when you've got skill, he replied. I can bring down any tree with a single swing. The boss raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? Prove it. Without a word, the old man grabbed an axe and marched outside. He walked straight up to a 5-foot tree, took one powerful swing, and thwack! The tree fell. The boss blinked in surprise, but the man was already moving on. Next was a 10-foot tree. One swing and down it went. Then a 30-footer, same result. Finally, the old man stood before an 80-foot redwood. He steadied himself, raised the axe, and with one clean strike, the giant tree crashed to the ground like it was nothing. The boss was speechless. That's incredible, he finally said. Where on earth did you learn to chop wood like that? The old man shrugged. Back in the Sahara forest. The boss frowned. You mean the Sahara Desert? The old man grinned. Yeah, that's what they call it now. My 90-year-old grandpa has always had a special way of making me laugh. During a visit tonight, he hit me with one of his usual out-of-the-blue questions. Do you save your peanut butter jars when they're empty? I paused, a little thrown off. Not really, I said. He nodded like he expected that answer. Then, with that slow, familiar shuffle, he made his way to the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a spotless, perfectly clean peanut butter jar. He handed it to me with the same seriousness someone might use to give away a family heirloom. You've got to save these, he said. At first, it felt like such a small, quirky thing to care about, especially now, when he's juggling doctor's appointments and the daily aches that come with age. But as I stood there holding that jar, something clicked. This wasn't about peanut butter. Over the last few months, he's been quietly handing down pieces of himself. A worn pocket knife he's had since I was a kid. A faded photo of my grandma on their honeymoon. And now, this jar. He never says it out loud, but I know what he's doing. These aren't just things. These are memories. Little echoes of his life, his values, his love. So I brought the jar home. I don't need it for anything in particular, but I'm keeping it. Because every time I see it, I'll think of his smile, his quiet wisdom, and how he found meaning in even the simplest things. Life moves fast. It's easy to forget that the small moments, like a clean peanut butter jar from someone who loves you, are often the ones that matter most. So from now on, yeah, I think I'll start saving mine too. A man walks into a toy store to buy a Barbie doll for his daughter. How much is that Barbie in the window? He asks the store clerk. She smiles and says, well, that depends. We have Barbie goes to the gym, $19.95. Barbie goes to the ball, $19.95. Barbie goes shopping, $19.95. Barbie goes to the beach, $19.95. Barbie goes nightclubbing, $19.95. Divorced Barbie, $395. Shocked, the man asks, wait, why does divorced Barbie cost so much more? The clerk sighs and says, oh, that's because divorced Barbie comes with Ken's house, Ken's car, Ken's boat, Ken's furniture,